Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Joni Salzman.
And I'm David Katz.
Cats.
Cats.
Cats. You just published a story this morning that pitted Roku TV streamers against Amazon Fire TV. What did you find?
Well, nobody who's read me in the last 3 or 4 years would be surprised to say that I think Roku is better. Amazon Fire TV, they're great. They've been making great strides. They sell a lot of units. Apparently, they're the most installed base now.
Right.
We find out, but Roku is still more neutral. The interface is still a lot simpler. It's a lot like your phone. You just go right to the apps. You go right to the TV shows that you want. The Fire TV interface is a whole bunch of stuff, TV shows, movies, ads, Amazon Prime, all over the place that you might not want to watch. So I think it's, in general, more annoying to use a Fire TV than it is a Roku. And that's really the major reason.
Speaking of Fire TV, what did you find as the major benefit for Fire TV that maybe they have a bit of a upgrade to Roku?
A couple things. The main one is ALEXA. She's much more useful on Fire TV.
I was like, is that some sort of standard I don't know about?
It is. It is a standard.
So when you say the wake word, Fire TV can do a lot more stuff. It works with Netflix. But then, today, the news came out that Roku also works with ALEXA. So it's a little bit more limited. You can't use Netflix, hands-free with your Roku.
That sounds like a big limitation, that you wouldn't
Right.
be able to use Netflix, but you would be able to use other services like, what is it, like Hulu,
Yeah.
obviously Prime Video.
Right.
Well, of course.
Of course,
let's-
Prime Video.
So let's walk through some of the enablements that the skill has. So like you would be able to open Roku, you would be able to do search, but you wouldn't be able to include Netflix. What are some of the other ones?
You can do fast forward and pause, for example. If you can't find your remote, you want to stop it for, go to get a sandwich or something like that. That works really well.
And a special bonus if you have a
Yes.
Roku TV versus a box or stick, which I
Yep.
just learned from Cats.
Roku TV owners can turn on the TV, which is by far the coolest thing. I think.
Amazing!
Yeah.
Turn it on and off. You can do volume. You can do input switching. You can even do channels if you have an
input
antenna
switching, that's
hooked up.
How does it work? Is there a hidden mic in my television that I didn't know about?
No,
Please say
sir.
no.
Your
Thank
TV
God.
is not spying on you via voice. There's plenty of other ways of spying on you. No, you have to pair it. It's just like any other Alexa skill. If you have a Dot or whatever, you can pair it in your Alexa app and go right to town.
And then it connects locally, through your Wi-Fi. That's
and
pretty
finds
cool.
the television. Works pretty well.
So I wanted to pivot to Netflix. We were talking a little bit about Netflix earlier. They were throwing shade at Steven Spielberg, who is trying to make it harder for Netflix to enter its movies into the Oscars. So, Joan, what's their beef here?
So it boils down to Netflix. Hollywood, it boils down to traditional Hollywood is not super into Netflix, especially on the film side, because Netflix, for a long time, released their movies on streaming and in theaters on the exact same day. Traditionally, theaters get about a 3-month window or longer where there's no competition with home viewing. In addition, Netflix spends a lot of money, so they can outspend traditional studios, and that's just annoying for people that are at traditional studios, that they don't have the same checkbook that they can write the same big checks with. And then they also get annoyed that Netflix doesn't play by other rules. Like Netflix doesn't release, when they do release movies in theaters, they don't do like box office receipts. They don't report that stuff. So it all kind of boils down to these two, like, traditionalists don't really like Netflix. And what Spielberg wants to do is say, like, look, you can't, if you're Netflix and you're a movie on Netflix, you're a made-for-TV movie. Win as many Emmys as that Academy sees fit, but you don't really belong here. And so Netflix sort of threw some shade, being like, well, there's reasons. We like both. We like cinemas. We also like at-home streaming. And the reasons why are maybe you can't afford to go to a theater. Maybe you live in a town. Maybe you live in a rural area where movies aren't in theaters. And so that's kind of where the beef boils down to.
Do you think Spielberg has a point here, or is it more that Netflix is probably going to win this argument?
I think that they both have points on either side. Certainly people that are advocates of streaming and getting diverse voices and diverse stories to wider audiences would fall in the streaming is fine camp, let them get Oscars. But then, I wanted to watch Roma, the movie that Netflix won most of its Oscars for this year. I wanted to see it on a big screen, and it was really hard to find it because they don't have the wide theatrical release that any other Best Picture contender would have.
We'll definitely keep an eye on that. If you want to read more about these stories, check them out on CNET. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Joni Salzman.
David Katzmeyer.
Thanks for listening. Damn it.
Okay, cats, consider your thunder stolen. It's mine now.
Well
Thanks,
done.
everybody, for joining us
call
for the
you
recording
Thor.
of the audio podcast. You can subscribe and take that along in your pocket using the links in the description below. But for now, go ahead and send in your questions and comments about the topics at hand. I, for one, think Steven Spielberg is being a jerk. And I want to go ahead and platform out there to see who else agrees or disagrees with this. I think
So-
it's a form of platformism and should be completely eradicated from society.
Okay, one interesting point to this in Spielberg's side that Jonah and I were talking about before the podcast was HBO doesn't get Oscars.
Right.
HBO is probably the most premium of the premium channels. They get loads of Emmys. They don't submit to the Oscars. And why
Yeah.
would they?
They can't because they don't. In order to qualify, be eligible for an Oscar, you have to have a movie in a commercial cinema in Los Angeles County for, I think, 1 week. And so for a long time, Netflix only released movies with that. Like literally, they did partnerships with
The
movie theaters.
barest minimum.
And
Just
I
in LA
asked,
for a week and
I
then they're out.
asked their CEO, like, why are you doing this deal? And I was like, he was like, literally, it's just for Oscar eligibility.
That's
and
pretty
s-
cynical by itself, I gotta say.
But that was like 2 years ago, and so
Right.
they've started to realize that having such a sort of cynical approach to theatrical release,
It's kind of like poking them in the eye.
it is.
Yeah.
And there's the directors, a lot of them really love having their movie on that beautiful big screen in the darkened theater with the magic of a hushed audience. They really like that. So like the fact that I think that part of the reason why they had such a robust, by Netflix standards, such a robust theatrical release for Roma was because they were appeasing Cuarón, the director. Like I'm sure that meant a lot to him to be able to have like a 70 millimeter film print with the Dolby fancy sound in theaters in Mexico and here. That
It
mattered a lot to
didn't-
him. So it hurt them for talent too.
And the movie itself lends itself much more to
Yeah.
the large screen. It's a lot of
Yeah.
sweeping vistas, a lot of great camera work, a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily translate to a 32-inch TV in your bedroom.
Or even this,
Yeah.
like people watch it on these. So I will kind of grant that point.
I think the issue here, though, is that for Oscar watchers, you could at least look at the fact that Roma didn't win Best Picture. This was Netflix's best chance to win Best Picture.
Yeah.
I mean, that does smack of politics. It does seem, especially after Spielberg shows up afterwards and says, like, hey, we don't even want this in our, we don't even want you to submit this to our awards.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say there's a lot of moving parts to what actually wins the Best Picture. There's promotional blitzes that the companies do themselves, and then there's the system of voting, which is complicated.
Yeah, I mean, Green Book versus Black Klansman, for example, which I really thought was a great movie. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. It's hard to see. I mean, of course, the criticism against Green Book is well known, but there's plenty of people that could argue, yeah, Roma was a better movie overall. But then there's plenty of people that say, you know what, it was kind of boring. It was more of an art movie. It was,
Right.
it looked beautiful, but what's going on there? So
It is fair to say that a lot of these it's very subjective. Those three
Yeah.
movies that you just described, which, by the way, I haven't watched either. Like all three of them are entirely different movies.
Yeah.
It's not like you're comparing three comedies against each other.
Yeah. So, HBO never wins Oscars because they can't. And so it's kind of the fact that Netflix is blurring the lines. Like we were discussing, what is a movie? Is it something that's really long and that's the only qualifier? Is it something that is in theaters, or it's in more theaters than a few theaters, or it's in lots of theaters? Like how do we make these definitions now that we're in this
It is
blurred
hurting my
era?
head.
And I feel like the Academy Awards in general, what is it, 93rd, 94, whatever it is,
Yeah.
they're really old and they're becoming increasingly irrelevant to people. I mean, really,
Yeah.
like I think the best use for the Oscars is to basically turn people on to movies that they wouldn't watch otherwise.
Yeah.
And people can go through, after and go, you know what, I'm going to create my little playlist. And if those things are not available to stream immediately, it's kind of a downer. I mean, that's why I watched Black Klansman, because it was
Yeah.
immediately right there. And I mean, of course, I was interested in the movie itself, but there's plenty of other alternatives that aren't available immediately. Or Black Panther, for example, which is on Netflix, and that was a Best Picture nominee.
I did not know that. I'm gonna go stream it
Exactly
right now.
Right. So that's
to hell
the
with
thing.
the podcast.
Right. So now you have your afternoon. But Netflix is super relevant, and that's what people watch now. And you have to work together, if you're the Academy, and support these guys and be as forthright as possible in embracing how people watch movies and get their TV shows now.
Yeah, it comes at this time where the Oscars are facing just that criticism. Not only that they're old and out of touch that way, but that they're out of touch with audiences that aren't old white men, because the majority of the
Yes.
Academy, especially the leadership of the Academy, is older white gentlemen, which is older white gentlemen are fine. My dad's an older white gentleman, but
Hey, Ben.
but it does sometimes mean that
We are
there's a subconscious bias against stories that don't reinforce those people's worldview. Whatever. The point is, kind of elbowing out this more populist way
Right.
of watching movies doesn't really lend itself to making it more accessible for younger people, not old white gentleman people, which is something that they've been facing for a couple of years. For a while.
I want to jump over to questions.
Yeah,
if we
yeah, yeah.
can.
Sorry,
No, not at all.
that was a little.
No, I think a lot of people are kind of sharing the same concept and opinion. I, for one, think the concept of the platform itself is a bit archaic and outdated and should be eradicated. Whether something is produced for television or desired to be put into theater is kind of irrelevant at this point. Budgets are kind of all over the place. You see some of the highest quality content being platformed on television. To call one thing and one another, it's a form of platformism, and I don't think that's okay anymore. Not to get on some super soapbox about it, it is just TV and movies. But, I mean, to me, a movie, no matter what the length or the production value or whatever, it's a self-contained, single-arc story that possibly calls for remarking in sequels, whereas something that's made for quote-unquote television is simply serialized. But then again, there are one-offs on TV and made-for-TV movies, so trying to separate these things is, I don't know, stupid to me.
In a certain way, though, they are walled off because the awards shows are walled off.
Yeah.
The
They're
Emmys are very
categorized. Like,
yeah,
you have to put them in categories to put them in a category to compete with each other. So
and those are both very credible awards. It's not like one of them is like this really like rinky-dink lousy awards show. The Emmys are
Right.
their own, very much in their own right, an award
but
that a lot of people
there is
stand
the
up for.
lingering pejorative that like something's
Totally.
made for TV, it's not as prestigious.
And the Emmys have come a long way, but
Mm-hmm.
I think most people would agree, this is more your world than mine, but most people would agree that they are still not viewed the same way as the Oscars.
yeah.
If you win an Oscar, it's
more
considered
rarefied.
pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah.
For
And
what-
both are very impressive, but yeah, like the Oscars is definitely like one step up in the rarefied ladder of like inaccessibility to achieve.
To be clear, I would gladly take a People's Choice Award.
What about a
Okay?
Teen Choice Award?
Kids'
Choice Award?
Yes.
You get
All of
slimed.
those.
You get slimed if you get a Kids Choice Award.
I am shameless. I will gladly get slimed for a Kids' Choice Award.
As long as it's not an MTV Movie Award, you're okay.
Yeah.
All right, so jumping into the questions, there's a comment that just floated through from Matthew Datcher that says, I don't really care about the award shows because they are a expletive removed. I just wanted to give you a quick nod for that one. I'm not going to repeat it on air, but I really
Well
Not
done,
for
Dad.
That's how you said it.
expletives. Hats off
for what it's
expletives
for what it's
and
worth,
profanity.
anytime my girlfriend watches those shows, I have to ask her now, which one is this again? Because I still can't tell the difference between the Emmys and the Oscars up front, because I'm just like, they're awards for the audio visual media. Which one is this one? Is this movies? Is this TV? She always has to explain it to me. I'm just a dummy. Matthew Datcher is continuing to say, is Steven Spielberg going to get traction with this opinion?
So, it's hard to say, partly because I'm not familiar. So there's going to be a meeting of Oscar leadership, and he is what's known as a governor from the director branch of the Academy, which means that there's people that are voting members of the Academy that get to vote on Oscars, and then there's people that are higher level like members, like a governor, like Spielberg is. And so there's going to be a meeting that includes governors and other Oscar leadership next month, and Spielberg has said he's going to bring up this issue then. But he hasn't been strident about it. Like, he hasn't been on a like war about it. He has said like, I want to bring it up, but he also has indicated that he's like interested to see where the conversation goes. So that's kind of, and there have been directors that are part of the Academy, not leadership, like Ava DuVernay, who's released stuff over Netflix that said like, if we're having a conversation, I would like to just put out there, I might not be a governor, but I really appreciate Netflix getting my stories out to people that otherwise wouldn't be able to see it. So, yeah, it'll be a conversation. It's just a conversation we won't be privy to because it's going to be behind closed doors at this meeting.
It wouldn't surprise me if the Oscars raised the stakes a little bit and just, kind of from a bureaucratic standpoint, made it a little bit more like you have to keep your movies in the theaters for longer, or you have to have
Right.
them in more theaters or something like that, just to
Right.
make it a little bit clearer that we're going to indicate this as a movie. We're going to like let the theater owners have this for a little bit longer, but we'll see if they come to an
Yeah.
agreement on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm drumming up an interesting topic here from CMDR Triums. They're asking about this trailer for Squadron 42. What platform would this land in? They go on to say it's innovative. Would it qualify for an award, an Oscar, an Emmy? Someone would do immersive media first and maybe well enough to be more popular than an actual movie. Now, I'm going to pull this up right here, right now. This is really cool. It technically qualifies as a game, but that looks like Gillian Anderson to me, and I'm pretty sure
Oh,
Mark
yeah.
Hamill is coming up in here. And just the level of production value to this, it is more of an interactive film. So when do these things start infiltrating the Academy?
So, I am not aware of any. So, short answer is I'm not aware of anything like this ever winning like an Oscar. But Iñárritu, the Mexican director, did do a VR installation that won a special Oscar. I can't remember what the category or whatever. It was like a special achievement Oscar for this VR based kind of haptic feedback experience that was at a museum in LA. So it's not the same, but the Emmys do give awards, not necessarily for games, but they do give awards for things like VR, for like immersive storytelling, interactive storytelling. So I don't know what the qualifications, the eligibility standards are for that, but I imagine maybe if Squadron 42 were to, first of all, you have to like apply and make yourself eligible. If they were to try to do that for an interactive Emmy, then maybe that's possible. I'm not sure, but that's where that's like kind of the most high profile award ceremony where I could expect to this possibly be eligible and contend.
Good answer.
You're welcome.
Very well thought out
Good
answer.
question.
Yeah, I thought so too. That was cool. I wasn't aware of Squadron 42, but now I'm very interested.
Yeah, it looks kind of cool.
I guess what it really kind of whittles down to is, do you think awards are all that relevant in general anymore? A lot of people in the chat do not. I don't know. We work in media too. It's nice to pat each other on the back once in a while, but when you turn it into the circus that is the awards ceremony, whatever. It's another thing to watch. Let's move on to streaming sticks. Now, I myself have a Fire TV stick because I'm ingrained in the Amazon ecosystem. We know Cats has all of the above. Joan and Ben, what are you using at home?
Well, we both use different ones, right? We're kind of like, we're not quite as hardcore as Cats, but I have a Roku TV and I have a Fire TV stick plugged into it now, and I use Apple TV every now and then just to
To
check.
be clear, no one does that,
Yeah.
Joan. I mean, you're the only one in the world that's ever done that.
Oh, wait. I do the exact same thing,
Yeah.
but without
Only-
the Apple TV.
We're professionals. Oh, wait, without the Apple TV?
Without the Apple TV,
Okay.
but I do have a Roku TV. I think we both have TCL Roku
Yeah,
TVs.
because I got it. and he was like,
With
"This
Fire
is nice.
TVs plugged
I want
into
the
them.
same thing."
with the Fire TV plugged into it, just
And an
because like
Apple
I cover
TV.
Amazon.
So where's your NVIDIA Shield, you guys? I mean, there's,
Right,
there's
the
no
NVIDIA Shield.
Chromecast
Let's not go
on
crazy.
input 3?
NVIDIA Shield. Let's not go crazy.
Okay.
I think I do have a Chromecast somewhere in like a junk drawer.
Most
I
people
do,
do.
too.
I've
Yeah.
lost it. I've lost it a while
They-
ago, but
they-
I still use my Chromecast
Nice. YouTube, it's great for YouTube.
and
look,
music.
I took your advice about Roku and getting a Roku TV because of the menu,
Yep.
and I definitely believe you're right. And having it be part of the actual interface of the television itself, as opposed to having a
Right.
dumb TV, I
Yeah.
upgraded to a smart TV over the holidays. Yeah, it's really nice. You don't need two separate remotes, which is it's a pleasant experience. My daughter, who's 6, knows exactly how to use
Yeah.
it, which
Right.
you know
Yeah.
that's a definitely thumbs up for it.
It's interesting because obviously, Roku was kind of first with all this stuff, and then Fire TV kind of did it and basically copies them at every juncture. And the latest example of that is Fire TVs built into the TV as well.
Yeah.
So these Fire TV Edition televisions came out a couple of years ago. They're rapidly increasing in sales. For example, they made a deal with Best Buy last year, where if you go into Best Buy, they're hawking Amazon Fire TVs from Insignia and Toshiba. These TVs are really, really getting to be very popular, and by the way, hella cheap as well. So they're competing directly against Roku TVs, and again, kind of making this built-in smarts a lot more accessible. And compared to a Samsung or an LG or whatever smart TV system,
Yeah.
both those guys are light years ahead.
From the perspective of picture quality, though, what's your impression on like a built-in Roku TV versus a built-in Fire TV edition?
Well, for picture quality, it doesn't freaking matter. It's all about the panel itself, about the technology of the television. So, for example, TCL makes a really good Roku TV called the 6 Series. Amazon Fire doesn't have any product like that now. There's none with full array local dimming or good HDR, Dolby Vision, that kind of stuff built into the TV. So hands down, that TCL Roku TV is the best performing of the two built-in systems. But it's just a matter of time before Amazon or somebody else decides to make a television with all those cool picture enhancing extras along with the Fire TV operating system. So we'll see how that works out.
Fantastic comments flooding in right now. Mike Shaw says he uses the PlayStation 4. I use that occasionally myself. I even still have an Xbox 360 that runs somehow. Terry Wallace says Fire TV in one word. Cody, careful there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people to talk about that.
I've self-admit I've tried it. It
Yes.
has worked 40 to 50% of the time. It's a bit buggy, but the outcome is
40 to 50.
yeah. Anyways,
not bad.
Chris De Leon says NVIDIA Shield is better than them both. And then Leslie Lai is asking, what does Roku actually mean? Does that stand for something? Is
That's
that an
a
abbreviation?
great question.
Why have we never asked that?
I don't know, but I'm gonna email them and find out.
Yeah,
I don't think I'll get a reply before the podcast is over because we only got a few more minutes. But
It's a fun word
actually
to
can
rhyme.
text him.
If it ain't Roku, don't fix it.
I thought it was an acronym.
I don't know. I feel like it's one of those made up words that they use to squat on a URL,
Maybe.
because nobody's gonna buy Roku.com, if you make up cruddy words.
So I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know a historical fun fact about Roku. Not the name, but it used to be, way a long time ago, it used to be a small part of Netflix.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're even still based in Los Gatos, where Netflix's main campus is. It used to be like way back before Netflix did original series. They were like flirting with the idea of making hardware,
Yeah.
and Roku started there, and then very quickly, like, I can't remember if it was spun off or just like set free because they decided they weren't interested. But yeah, Anthony Wood went off on his own and just continued it on his own from
And
there.
the brand started as an audio streamer. They
Oh, did
started
it?
out, by being like a competitive to like those, those old Logitech streamers that'll, play Napster or whatever. They have, basically speakers, and now they're coming back full circle because they're finally selling speakers again that go with their Roku TVs and stuff.
Which apparently aren't that good, but okay.
Well, they're $150, and that we compared them to a soundbar. Soundbars in general are going to give you a little bit better bass that has a subwoofer attached to it, but the Roku speakers are really good for audio. For example, music plays really well through them. You get the stereo separation the soundbar doesn't give you, but yeah, they're not my first choice for enhancing your TV's sound. If you have a Roku TV, they're super convenient.
More people chiming in favor of the Chromecast as well. I've got a Chromecast. I got my mom a Roku TV. Kind of covered all the bases. People pointing out the caveats that none of them are truly end-all, be-all perfect. The Amazon Fire TV, as for example, doesn't run YouTube properly. Michael Brown's asking, is Android TV dead? He's also asking, who came first? Was it Apple TV?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I'm pretty sure it was Apple TV, but I think the first device to stream Netflix was a Roku.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they were first out of the gate. There are also some smart TVs super early that had Netflix apps built in. Like LG, I feel like was one of the first. But anyway, long time ago. And in terms of Android TV, they're still around, basically in the US with NVIDIA Shield only, which is a high-end, sort of geek-friendly streaming device that runs a lot of games and is super fast and works really well, with a lot of the apps. But it's $150, $170. So it's more in the rarefied atmosphere, whereas all these other ones are $30 and up. So you can kind of mix and match and see which one you like best.
Paul brings up one last caveat, pointing out that him being a Canadian citizen and fan of the show, he can get way more out of the Fire TV device than a Roku in Canada. Paul, let us know, or Katz, maybe you can answer it. What is the difference? Why is the Amazon Fire TV a better product in Canada?
I mean, I don't know from Canucks, but I'll tell you one thing. On my article I just wrote, somebody says the exact opposite about Canada And he says, the Amazon ecosystem continued to be terrible in Canada, so it is a much easier choice here. Roku wins by a landslide. So I think your dude and Red Hagar 67 need to get in the comments and duke it out. I don't know. I don't live there. From what I understand, you have some pluses, minuses, but I'm pretty sure all the big apps are available on both.
One more question coming in from R. Wallop on behalf of the Academy and movie category we spoke on earlier. I like that you can see a blockbuster movie at home by using Netflix. Do you think in the future the Academy will use the amount of viewership as the eligibility for a movie as opposed to their theatrical run?
So I don't know about viewership as a qualifying standard. But so two things on that. If they were to use the amount of viewership, that wouldn't help Netflix because Netflix, it's like in their DNA to not share that stuff. And that's part of the reason why traditional Hollywood is kind of annoyed. Like they don't share box office returns. They don't share streaming numbers except for kind of rare cases where it's flattering for them to release some sort of stat about how many people have watched Bird Box, for example, is the prime example of it. But the Academy is looking to, not necessarily looking at how many people watched a movie or like how big its box office was, but they are looking, that's why Black Panther was nominated for Best Picture this year, is because they are looking for ways that they can have more popular appeal films contend in these high-profile categories. That's why they expanded the number of Best Picture nominees from what was it, like 5 to 10.
And why they backpedaled on the popular film category.
Yeah, and then there was the popular film category. They backpedaled on that because the idea was that popular films like Black Panther wouldn't be able to, they would be ghettoized in that category, and they wouldn't get the chance to really run in Best Picture because people would be like, well, we'll just nominate that for the like popular category that we're using to appease the masses. So I don't know about how many people view something or what a box office thing is, but they are considering ways to make more popular appeal films, mass appeal films get recognition.
Dear Academy and Mr. Spielberg, we will not be pandered to. We are out of time. Thanks everybody for joining us. Great questions as always. Before we do close it up, we have a...
Oh, hold on.
We've got a surprise.
Oh, whoa, what's going on?
There's actually...
What's happening?
Okay.
So for those that can't tell, hey,
All right. So let's do a quick intro here. So March 1st was our...
Poor BVG. Yeah.
Wait, you guys need to do that for him, you know?
That's let me explain what the hell is happening.
What is I don't even know what's happening, and I'm standing here.
Do I have to be out here too?
Yeah.
March 1st was our 3-year anniversary of the show. So, in honor of BVG, who has been an amazing producer.
Literally the heart of the show.
best.
The only reason the show is still around for 3 years.
Or remotely watchable.
This is for you, my friend.
Oh dear, what have you done? What have you done? Oh, I got an award too.
You get your own award.
Oh my God, you guys!
Nice.
It's actually printed out. It's actually
It's a real one.
What's the word?
Engraved.
Yes.
Yes.
We got it engraved for
They
you.
actually got it engraved.
That
Holy
is
cow!
beautiful.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome.
can't
Thank
zoom
you.
in. There's no one
I know. Because no one is a
You're not
controller.
there to zoom in.
Can you read what it says on the trophy, though?
MVBVG 2019.
There
That
you
is
go.
brilliant. You guys are the best.
You're the
Thank
best.
You are the best.
You're
the
You're the best.
Thanks everybody.
Now get in your
Thank you.
control room and wrap up the show.
All right, let's wrap that show.
But yes, it's been a fantastic 3 years. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Can't believe it's been 3 years.
How long were you guys lurking out in the hallway waiting
For
us?
like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry, we kept getting
What's
questions.
going on?
This was open the whole time. You could have just stood by.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. You could have, and we would have given you the thumbs
we
up.
did
There's
not,
a
over
we
window
did
here.
not
to the
plan
hallway
that so
over
well, as is usual for
Hey,
359.
It worked out. It worked out.
We did it.
Are we ready?
Yes, thank
All
you
right,
everybody so
359
much.
is available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Google Play, Google Podcast, the Amazon Echo, and of course, CNET.com, MVBVG 2019. Thank you so much, everybody,
Round
for
of
watching.
applause.
Go, Brian!
Round of applause.
Thank you everybody.